Welcome back to the rules of engagement. We talked a little bit about partying versus Flash Game 1 and the cool different harassment options and harassment defensive options Terrence and Protoss have in Heart of the Swarm. We just started to get into the mid-game, and we're going to continue talking about the mid-game and the late game on this awesome matchup. A couple cool things that I really want to focus on is first of all going to be basically, as the game progresses, who benefits the most from an engagement? Is it a Terran? Is it a Protoss? When is it the Terran? When is it the Protoss? When is it the Zerg? Like, in general, when should you be looking for an engagement, and when should you be trying to avoid the engagement? Make it so if there is an engagement, it's basically massively in your favor. Then we're going to talk about drawing your opponent out of position and some things techniques you use to do that. And then also Templar control, which is a very, very important part of a Protoss perspective. And also, it's important if you're non-Protoss to understand what Protoss will be looking to do with your Templar, and then you can basically better have a way to mitigate that once you understand what they're going to be trying to do. So jumping into this game, what we have here is we have a situation. Let's actually back this up just a hair. That's about a hair, maybe a hair point two. So going forward here, we have the situation where if we look at the army sizes, Flash is a decent amount ahead, not massively. But if you look at the food, Flash is nearing max, whereas Partying still has about 50 more food to go. So as a general rule, if you have an army advantage, right, which Flash does, or if you're closer to being max, is another way to put it, although food doesn't always equal army strength, but if you have a current army advantage, unless your opponent has like zero economy, they can't produce units, you generally want to engage and trade units as soon as possible. And the reason why you want to do that is actually, let's just take a look at the army supply tab. Actually, I think is pretty cool. Active forces maybe. And if we take a look at those two numbers, see if we can bring up the good old touchscreen here. We have to think about is right now, right? Flash has a larger active forces, right? But let's say time goes on. So right now, he's ahead by 2,000 resources, right? If you add these two numbers up, he's 8,000 total resources, right? And his opponent is roughly at like 6,300. So right now, he's slightly under 4/3 more strength than his opponent. But if both these two numbers increase at roughly equal rates, right? Or even if you think about it, Flash is close to being max, so his number can't get that much bigger, right? Maybe the most it can be is 10K. But Partying's number can also get to 10K. So as they both build up forces, this difference percent-wise, the extra advantage he'll have, will get smaller, right? But what if he can trade, force a battle and trade 5,000 resources for 5,000 resources? All of a sudden, instead of two numbers that are both big and both roughly close, if you take 5,000 off both of those, right, minus 5,000, what are we going to end up with? We're going to end up with Flash with 3,000 over Partying with 1,300. And now all of a sudden, instead of a situation where they both have scary armies, Flash is maybe a little more scary, we now have a situation where Flash is well over twice as strong. Which means that if you're that much stronger, your opponent's basically dead. Like, there's no micro that can beat an army twice as big. Unless there's like some weird anti-micro and Flash like runs his guys in a little choke or something. But basically, if you have a stronger army advantage and you can trade down equally, it's in your interest, because as the numbers get smaller, it hurts them more than it hurts you because they have less units, so each unit is more important to them. So very, very useful to know that. General rule, if you have the larger army currently, unless your opponent has a much stronger or much weaker economy and they're not going to be able to grow their army very well, you want to do those engagements. So right now, Flash is the one who is in his interest to engage his opponent. So going forward, he's going to be looking for an engagement, right? He's going to be trying to get in here, and of course, that's why he threatens a drop. Because he doesn't want to fight straight up, because he doesn't have the ghost out yet to deal with the Templar. But what he does want to do is utilize this drop play to try to get his opponent to get out of position. And this is what's interesting, is here he's losing some units, basically. Losing 2 medevacs of guys, not a great trade for him. But what he is going to gain, right, is now his opponent had to move a lot of these forces back into main. So now, if now Flash pushes it to natural, right? I mean, the one thing is, if you look from Flash's point of view, he doesn't know about this third base. If he did know about it, he could just stem his army and run up there and cancel before Partying could do anything, and that would pretty much seal the game. But because he doesn't know about it, he's just wanting to trade units, right? And if we look at this army, right, in the open, if he engaged just half a minute ago straight up, the Zealots would have charged in and fought him. But as we can see going forward now, the army has to come around this corner. So all of a sudden, Parting's units are pretty much out of position. All these Zealots here, they're going to be much, much, much less effective charging forward. Look at these Zealots. They're all stuck backwards. And Flash can take great trades. The Vikings can deal with the Colossi, while the Colossi are still trying to catch up to the Kairi Bio. And many of the Zealots are still not even into action. They're having a really hard time connecting, even with that charge upgrade, because Flash caught his opponent while his opponent was in movement. And that's like a general, this is basically a general rule of StarCraft, or of war in general. Usually the most optimal time to attack your opponent is when they're in movement. And the reason why that's true is because if your opponent's in movement, it's much, much less likely their forces are ideally positioned, because it's much, much harder to have every unit in the perfect spot battle-wise if you're trying to move the whole force at once. It's just the logistics are extremely difficult to keep everybody in the perfect spot. So if you can catch your opponent, if you're looking to do an engagement and you can see them in movement, and you'll usually get a better engagement than you would if they're statically positioned, ready to defend the angle that you're approaching, because, of course, in that situation, you're going to be positioned just perfectly. So Flash gets a decent trade there, and we can see now he has a nice food advantage, right? And now we're at a point in the game where we're going to take a look at kind of parting. So actually, let's go for this. A lot of more skirmishing here as Flash tries to keep trading. And why is he trying to play so aggressively and get these trades on when, in fact, his active army out here that in the front is not really going to beat this army? What it can do is he can try to trade decently against it. And the reason he wants to trade is, again, look at the food, right? It's 180 to 124. If the game went passive, right? We'll actually just play this forward a bit. If this game went passive, right, what would happen? We'd be stuck in a situation where Flash could get 20 more food, and then he couldn't improve his army anymore. And Parting's army would get better, and then all of a sudden the battle would be less favorable to Flash. Even though he might have a lot of money in the bank, that money is an active army that can help him win the battle right now. If you let your opponent get a scary army and they win a couple battles, all of a sudden your bank runs out and you're in trouble. So if you're ahead currently in army strength, try to keep the engagements going so that you basically you're going to stay ahead in army strength as the game goes on. So you can see here, keep pressing to action if you're Flash, keep trading units, even if, I mean, he's not actually trading amazingly here. He's not trading terribly, but they're basically losing roughly equal amounts of units. And it's staying at 180 food to 120. And you keep doing that, you keep doing that, and eventually you'll starve your opponent out, because meanwhile you can take a fourth base, as we can see here, and your opponent, being down at 120 food, has to just constantly reproduce their army to try to even stay alive. Not to mention the fact that these medevacs are going to keep accumulating energy as well, which can help him help his armies like repeat value as the game goes on. So next thing we're going to talk about now is controlling Templar, and some of the things you want to look at to do here. As we can see, let's actually back this up a tiny bit. And if you were catching some of the action in some of those earlier battles, you notice the same thing. If the Templar are basically from one direction, right? So if Flash is this, he's looking, if you're Flash and you're Micron as a Terran player, you're always looking at where your opponent's army is typically, right? And so you're looking here, you're Flash, you're looking here as the battle goes on. As soon as you see Templar, right, you can just kite backwards, right? So you see 3 Zealots, okay, I keep my green. I'm going to keep my green. And then as soon as, let's say he sees a Templar poke its head around the corner, like right, I think there's one coming in right here, right? He sees a Templar, okay, that has no storm, that's okay. He sees another Templar, okay, this guy does have a storm. So he's going to be already anticipating the storm and backing away. So you can see here, look at the health of these Marauders. 4 of them are under red. A perfect storm here would kill 4 Marauders, which is actually, I mean, if nothing moved, it'd actually kill all the Marauders because they're all pretty here. But even if Flash reacted, if he reacted reactively, once the storm goes down, he then tries to move out, he'd lose at least 4 Marauders here. But as a Terran player, especially if Flash's Caliber, they see a Templar, they're going to be anticipating the storm and already backing away. So we can see here the storm is going to come down, and he has already split away 3 of these Templar. Another 2 stayed forward because he wanted to try to snipe a Templar, and he actually does probably, okay, he forces an Archon merge. But they're going to be basically anticipating the storms and reacting to them, or acting before they're cast, as opposed to reacting to them. And again here, from one direction, he could have easily EMP'd that Templar before the storm got off. Unfortunately missed it by a tiny bit, but the idea is there that one direction Templar at a high level play generally aren't going to be super efficient, right? what you want to be doing as a Protoss player is when your opponent's distracted from a single direction, you sneak in and attack from a different angle, right? And that makes it much harder for your opponent to anticipate that, because they're busy microing maybe the drop, they're busy macroing, and they're busy looking at the front zealot angle that they're probably going to miss a Templar that sneaks around the back, like right here, right? He's looking at the front, he's microing a drop. A Templar that sneaks around from a weird angle, multiple angles, is much more likely to land a great storm and a great feedback and get an amazing trade. I mean, the Templar is still going to die, but remember, a Ghost is more valuable than Templar, and he weakened the Medivacs, weakened another Ghost, not to mention getting the 1 kill with the feedback. So again, going forward here, if you're the Protoss player and your Terran player is pushing you from this direction, these Templar here are unlikely to get great storms. It can happen. Like, it's definitely happened before. In fact, earlier this game, I think we saw it happen. But this Templar here, sneaking in from the back, this is a Templar right here that can really get that massive storm, because look at the distance. The Ghost had about a second to land that snipe, right? And it's not that Flash is bad that he missed that, right? He was busy killing the 3 Ghosts here. It's that everybody can only really pay attention to one thing at a time, typically. So they're going to keep moving their eyes around, but the more different angles you come at from, the more likely you are to land those great storms and turn a situation where this was an almost unwinnable battle. After that one storm that takes out all the Marines and all the Jutsu units and even getting a lot of Ghost kills, it's in a situation where now would turn to be an almost unwinnable battle. He's killed 7 Ghosts, a horde of Marines. He's still being pushed back a little bit, but it salvages the situation into one that Parting can definitely continue on from here. We can see that the food gaps drop to about 40 now, and Parting basically has a fighting chance, as Flash's units are very damaged, his Medivacs are hurt, low in energy. And now, this is what Flash says. He says, you know what? I'm tired of these Templar coming in and storming me in the back. I'm just tired of it. So what does he do? He finds an angle where all of a sudden on the high ground, Parting has no way to get Templar behind him. So fighting in a one-directional battle is going to favor the Terran. And of course, Parting realizes that he's going to back away. And again, he's going to try to, ideally, he's going to have the Templar here. Unfortunately, these guys are a little bit slow because Templar moves slow. And Flash is going to get that one-directional fight that he so desires. Now, this game's going to go on for a little bit longer. A lot of cool stuff happens in it. Check out the VOD, youtube.com/official MLGSC2, because this game is actually one of the most awesome ones. I think it's top 10, if not top 5, the entire tournament. It's in one of those playlists as well, I believe. But the main idea here is if you're Protoss and you get that late game where you have Templar, try to come in with Templar from multiple angles. If you're a Terran player or even a Zerg player, try to make sure that the Protoss doesn't have multiple angles they can come in from. If you're in an open area, send a few squads of guys around. Make sure the sides are clear. There's no pylons. There's no Templar lurking out there. And then if all you have to do is focus your attention straight on a straightforward battle, you can just have your mouse straight with the Ghost and just spam EMPs, and you should be able to get those EMPs off before the storms can really get in deep in your army and do massive, massive damage. So I hope you guys enjoyed this game number 1, and as you play in the ladder, try to use those Templar multiple angles. It is key, and it will help you understand tactics a little better. We'll take a short break and get on to game number 4 of this series.